This session on developing the next generation of innovators really spanned the gamut of emotions. On the one hand, we looked at the obstacles to getting young, new talent from younger generations like the millennial generations into the nuclear security field. The person that really did that best was Robichaud from the Carnegie Corporation. And he really figured out a nice way to kind of categorize what we're up against. On the other hand, there was a lot of great ideas about how we could potentially solve this, get around those obstacles.
The main three categories I see, one relates to structure of the field, so the sort of structural impediments to having people join. You can't come and go. Generally, the rewards come later in your career, so you have to spend a lot of time doing less interesting things before you get to do more interesting things. And how do you compete with fields where you can be building really cool stuff as a 26-year-old?
People see it as a kind of all or nothing. You're in for the long run career, or you're not. We don't really see it as something you can dabble in. The private sector is far ahead of the public sector in terms of attracting us into these kind of mini career opportunities.
And it's much easier to work in many different fields. You can, as a technical person, it seems much more likely to work for a renewable company, to develop wind turbines, or to develop solar cells or electric cars, or develop new devices.
The second relates to personal connection. This issue, it's very difficult to make a personal connection to the nuclear issue in the way it is to some other issues.
So people said I get involved in things if I feel like somebody I know, or if I have been personally impacted by it. And again, it's very hard to think about nuclear in that way.
And the third is a question of efficacy. If people are going to get involved in something, they want to feel like they can make a difference. And I don't think we've done a good job of showing people that they can make a difference within this field.
So from day one, it was nuclear. I've never studied anything else in my life. Studied knowing that nothing potentially will be built again in terms of new reactor plants. Well, how do we drive new people in now?
Unlike traditional panels that would have just kept us mired in analyzing and reanalyzing the problem and ended up kind of in this depressing conversation, we quickly moved from problems into solutions. And there was a real sense that there are many, many ways around these obstacles and many, many things we could do to make the field much more vibrant, much more creative, much more innovative.
How can we make the issue of nuclear arms something that is captivating and interesting and genuinely engaging to young people?
So 25% of the people we spoke to said we're interested in nuclear as kind of a standalone issue. 51% said we're interested where it kind of interacts with another issue that we might be interested in. And I think that is one of the things that we might want to think about, is how do you actually connect nuclear weapons issues and nuclear security with other questions that are on people's minds. Think about not just how does nuclear impact topical issues, Iran, Russia, North Korea, but how does it impact other challenges on the global agenda?
The word that I haven't heard on this roundtable is the word peace, actually. Even if it sounds like the word that was used in the 70s by people, it still, at least for me, it is attractive to work for global peace or for a peace issue, actually, which I can also tell other people. So if they ask me, what are you doing disarming nuclear weapons, I say, look, I'm working for a peace cause.
So I'm in an interesting position at the university, being in a field that is probably the most conservative out of most fields. If you look at our curriculum, we're not that different what we were 20, 30 years ago in terms of what we teach to our students. As we see young people entering the field, how do we attract them? The most important thing is make nuclear field a dynamic field, the one that adapts to the new technology. So one thing that we do is make nuclear more interdisciplinary. So at least in my group, we work with robotics, we work with chemistry, with mechanical engineering, we work with physics students. To give you concrete examples, we work on robots that could survive high radiation environments in both accident scenarios, but also in non-proliferation, discovering illicit activities when you can't really send a human to.
we would need artists, we would need technicians, we would need policy people, we would need people from all kinds of backgrounds, but they need to be interested in the issue and they need to work together. They need to be open to work together. How to get them? It's difficult, but I think one piece that could be actually managed is to give them an opportunity to be involved part-time, kind of like an amateurish involvement, instead of this is your career path, this is your job. Just have them, a way where they could spend some time, give them a chance to have their work actually contributed to them.
But the beauty of this series is that it's backed by a coalition of foundations that actually can fund concrete ideas to come out of these roundtables. And so in this roundtable, there were a lot of really good, really practical, really concrete ideas about what we could initiate literally coming out of the roundtable.
I think there's also some pretty simple things that could be done on just videos and the storytelling piece, sort of going back to what Moritz was saying. It's like to connect it to stuff that kids are deeply felt issues. So peace is a great one, but justice is also a really important one that I think could be tied to these issues. You've probably have seen the Story of Stuff project. That's a really good example. It just started with a video and it's become a movement. There's just a series of videos that have done really good job of capturing a very complex and abstract issue in a way that just gets people riled.
I'm developing open source software basically because before I used export controlled software and I could not share the results I produced with all other people I actually met. So I decided that open source software, where I share the source code and my software with others, is helpful in this sense. And I learned this from the computer science community or the hacker community.
And I really like the idea that was made earlier by our physicist friend, in that, hacking culture in terms of promoting nuclear safeguards, I think that's a fantastic idea.
Why not do a hackathon on college campuses?
Well, it probably would be best if it wasn't me, because I'm completely useless with computers. But I think in general, yes, it's a fantastic idea.
Many people also talk about virtual realities for nuclear safety, and they would use it for training, they would use it for testing actually, policies, treaties, negotiations. And these, I think, could be a good spot where game developers could come in, or people interested in games.
I think VR, virtual reality, is a wonderful tool to explore some of these issues. Now, whether it's a game or it's a film, and that's something that people are debating, but the idea that that a story is being told and you are able to participate in that story and you're able to change the narrative. And one of the reasons why games is an interesting medium to explore on these issues, we were talking about storytelling earlier as a way to not only excite the next generation on these issues, but personalize it. It made me think about something I heard that the NSF said as they are dealing with very similar issues of getting young people to want to enter into STEM-related careers, about bringing the cameras into their labs and telling stories that happen within what might be presumably considered closed doors. When we talk about openness and transparency, I think that will humanize this to get young people to see themselves in some of these stories and how they can actually make a difference.
Why not bring a small truck to each college campus that has lots of computer screens and flashing lights and things, and make it, pick a small group of students and say, okay, this is a situation room. Like, let's say there's a rogue state, there's a rogue actor. We don't know who they are, or we don't know if there's a nuclear accident or whatnot. Let's run through a scenario. Let's try and avert, global Armageddon, and then say, reinforce the idea. Look, if you're interested in nuclear disarmament, here is a follow-up internship. It would also help to compensate them because the private sector is far more enticing in that fashion.
I know that when N Square was started, it was partly so that we could talk to as many different types of people as possible, and you can trust that we are combing through all of these videos, looking for those ideas that might be a glimmer of something that we can fund, might be something that we can pursue to see how much we can learn from it.
In some ways, this roundtable was a glimpse into the nuclear security field of the future. Almost all the participants were younger, coming from younger generations, the millennial generation, or at the very least, Generation X. And so we saw here a sense of what the future is going to be. And it was a much more positive, much more can-do attitude. And there was a lot of really, really good energy that the field is on the cusp of being transformed.
I think this is exactly what we're seeing in young people's lives. They have a very strong feeling of agency and voice, a sense of being able to work in a more peer-based, flatter structure, much more exchange, sharing, collaboration at the peer-to-peer level, that there's joint problem solving, a sense of shared purpose and mission that drives kids doing things together, which is very different from that sort of competitive achievement dynamic that you're seeing in the more institutionalized ways of getting ahead.
Again, I'm a little bit heartened by the fact that we don't need tens of thousands of people to throw themselves behind this. When we're talking about drawing in new talent, the number of new talented people we need to bring in is in the hundreds, I would say.
Thank you.